Welcome to the channel. Chapter 2. If we understand the process that creates our experience, we will know the manner in which to affect the two inputs. All that is left for us to do now regarding our four-step system is to cover the process responsible for creating our life experience. Once this is explained, we will be done with our analysis and we will have the understanding pertaining to the logistics of how our life experience is created. In Chapter 3, we will learn how to apply this understanding in order to gain the capacity to direct our life experience. Without understanding how experience is created, we cannot learn the manner in which we ought to affect the inputs. If an electrician does not understand how the concept of electricity works, they would have a pretty difficult time performing their job. Essentially, what we are doing here is the equivalent of learning how electricity works before going out and doing the work. Note, it must be clarified that there is a process by which our life experience is created, what we are covering here, that forms part of the understanding we need to gain. Then there is the process that forms the main part of this book. This is the manner by which we will apply the understanding gained in the previous chapters to our own life experience in order to achieve the ultimate goal of gaining the capacity to direct our life experience in accordance to our will. What we are experiencing, what we are engaged in. Perspective is the ongoing process that creates our experience via the two inputs. The overall process is comprised of several sub-processes that take place in real time and contribute to our life experience. The commonly accepted definition for perspective is a point of view. This term is apt for the process since all of our experience is our point of view. We know our life experience is not what is, reality, and thus it cannot be anything other than this, our point of view. But rather than the term describing something static and defined, in the manner in which we use it, it is something dynamic and alive. Perspective is comprised of the following sub-processes. 1. Sense organs pick up information from their interactions with our environment. 2. Our mind interprets this information, and as a consequence, we experience sensorially via our capacities. 3. Our mind creates associations based on the experience that took place. 4. The resemblance to an element from our associations encountered via our experience triggers a chain reaction, and consequently, we experience all the elements corresponding to the association the triggered elements belong to. 5. Our associations are updated/changed via our experience. Loop. Note: keep in mind that all these sub-processes go on in the background, as explained at the conclusion of Chapter 1. All that we are aware of is our experience, which is manifested via our three capacities: thinking, feeling, emotions, and sensing. All we can ever consciously do is experience, and the manner by which we do this is via our three capacities. Perspective takes place in our mind. What we call the mind can be considered the processor in which perspective takes place. It is an innate mechanism by which our ongoing experience is created. The mind does not refer to the physical brain, but rather to the functional aspect of the brain that embodies the process. In order to understand perspective, we not only have to understand the sub-processes that are involved, but also the logistics of how these function within the overall process. In Chapter 1, we covered the sub-processes, even though we did not identify these as such when we were discussing the associations. These are quite straightforward, and what has been covered thus far grants us the understanding required to mostly comprehend perspective. However, the last two sub-processes could use a bit more expansion. The subprocesses. The resemblance to an element from our associations encountered via our experience triggers a chain reaction, and consequently we experience all the elements corresponding to the association the triggering element belongs to. This subprocess represents how associations work. As far as our functionality goes, this can be compared to a bat's sonar in the manner that it allows us to operate and function within our environment. Without it, we would be completely lost, blind as bats. Its function is to grant us context and continuity. We are able to navigate through our experience thanks to associations constantly triggering and allowing us to relate to our surroundings. We might not consciously realize that this is taking place at all times, but it is. When we run into what resembles an element from an established association in our experience, this triggers the rest of the elements within that association, and these are experienced by us. For example, when we see a person we know, we might not perceive that we are associating with them, that this subprocess is taking place on some level, since we do not feel overwhelming emotions or have any thoughts pertaining to them, but our mind is indeed associating. We see the individual thanks to our sense organs, and this can trigger soft emotions such as ease, calm, or any other emotion. Emotions are not always something overwhelming that take control of us. They can be a sort of bridge that sets the associative tone per se. We are always associating with our surroundings in one way or another via triggers. It is very clear and uncomfortable when we are forced to be around someone whom we do not know how to connect with. We can feel this, and within itself, this experience is the result of how we associate with that particular individual. Note: we must remember that we do not encounter the elements directly in our experience. The elements are components that make up the associations and solely reside within our mind. However, we do encounter situations that include components resembling the elements making up our associations. These are the triggers by which associations unfold. Our associations are updated/changed via experience itself, the loop. One will notice that two of the subprocesses that comprise perspective actually produce experience. We can ask ourselves, how can this be? How can a process that results in our life experience have experience as a component? The answer is simple. Our life experience is ongoing and builds upon itself. We do not see our life as one continuous experience. We arbitrarily segment this into multiple experiences. As such, experiences that have already taken place, chunks of our overall life experience, shape experiences that are yet to take place via the creation of our associations. Remember, experience creates our associations, and our associations create our experience. If experience would not be part of the process would be linear, with a clear start and end. There would be no continuity or context or even associations. As previously mentioned, our life experience is not complete, and our experience is ongoing. The process of perspective is continuously self-actualizing via our network of associations and our experience, the loop. The manner in which our life experience is actualized is part of the process. It is not the case that we have one experience, and then the process is complete. How perspective creates our ongoing experience. We not only have to understand the sub-processes, but we also have to understand the flow of the overall process, the logistics. The key here is to grasp that perspective is not a linear process in which the sub-processes take place in a sequential manner, one at a time. All the sub-processes take place simultaneously. Perspective is constantly creating our life experience, creating associations while updating other associations. Consequently, it is nearly impossible to establish a linear flow for the process by which our ongoing experience is created. There is no order, and everything happens simultaneously. However, there is one moment in our life when we can find a sort of beginning of the thread for the creation of our ongoing experience. This moment is the time of our birth, when the process of perspective is not yet established. Just as we are booting up, so is the process. It is not yet running all the subprocesses. It is precisely at this time that we can observe a linear flow in the development of our life experience. However, this is extremely short-lived, as all the subprocesses soon commence, almost immediately. This initial moment provides us with an opportunity to follow the process by which our ongoing experience develops and gain a bit of insight in regards to said process. Once perspective is established, all that can be said is that our ongoing experience is created by all the sub-processes taking place. At this point, we cannot really describe how our life experience is being formed due to the lack of sequence. Let us step into this initial moment in order to get a sense of linearity. Scene: we are born. Our sense organs begin picking up information from their interactions with the environment. We then experience based on our mind's interpretation of input number 1 via our capacities, thinking, feeling, and sensations. Our mind proceeds to create the record of this experience as input number 2, associations. As this goes on, we continue to amass experiences. When we encounter something within our experience that resembles an element pertaining to one of the recently established associations, we will experience the elements from that given association via our capacities. This experience, brought on by our associations, records of past experiences, will be experienced in a unique manner dependent on the context of the situation at hand. The experience will cause the associations responsible for its creation to update. Recall our ice cream example. From here on out, we are constantly consciously experiencing while our mind is constantly creating our experience in a continuous cycle. Our experience updates our associations, and our associations, along with input number 1, create our experience. Perspective is the sort of flow of experience that we step into at the moment of our birth, and we are stuck in. The time when we exit this flow of experience is the moment of our death, at which point the sub-processes start shutting down. States of consciousness: how we differentiate experience. This section has nothing to do with how the process of perspective creates our ongoing experience, but rather serves as a clarification for us regarding the different categories we give to our experience. The experience resulting from perspective is not all seen as such by us. We organize this into 3 distinct categories. We actually do not realize that all we undergo is indeed experience. Our belief is that experience is solely restricted to the present moment, live experience. Anything taking place outside of this is considered to be something entirely different. We have what we refer to as memories, which come from us remembering, as well as fantasies, which come from us imagining. We do not view memories or fantasies as experience. We tend to think of these as something entirely separate from our life experience, with no consequential implications for us. However, all fantasies and memories are indeed experience, just as much as experience in the present is so. We sometimes find ourselves remembering, others imagining, and yet others reacting to our immediate environment, life experience. These distinctions, however, are only for the sake of aligning our life experience with our conceptualization of time, past, present, future, and this is fine. Notwithstanding, we must be aware that all these states of consciousness, remembering, imagining, and life experiencing, indeed constitute experience. The point here is being that when we are remembering or imagining, there is nothing different going on. The process of perspective is creating our life experience as usual. We just simply are categorizing the experience so as to align this to our conceptualization of time. If the process of perspective brought about an experience that we interpret as past events, we categorize this experience as memories and say we remember. If the process of perspective creates experience that is not connected to our timeline, meaning it has not happened, we refer to it as imagining. However, the consequences experience has on our network of associations are the same, regardless of our categorization for it. Note: it is obvious how remembering deals in time. This has to do with what we believe has taken place. However, how does imagination relate to time? It does not. That is how imagination relates to time. Imagination is not something that has happened or that will necessarily happen. It is important to establish this clarification regarding the categories we have for experience. We as humans are used to dividing our experience and not necessarily being aware of all the categories as experience all the same. We need to be clear on this. Regardless of whether we remember, imagine, or life experience, these are all experience in the same regard. We cannot do anything but experience. All experience is treated equally by the process of perspective and thus has the potential to influence our ongoing life experience in the same degree. This is the big aha moment where we become aware that what we categorize as remembering and imagining, our memories and our fantasies, can potentially shape our network of associations just as much as life experience does. Meaning that the themes of our life as well as our ongoing life experience are both shaped by the states of consciousness of remembering and imagining. Note: due to these categorizations we make, it can be said that triggers not only serve to set off certain associations, but also the states of consciousness. An example of this is when we are reminded of something, we suddenly are brought into a state of remembering from having been present. The same can happen with imagination. We can suddenly go from being present to suddenly becoming entangled in a daydream. What is interesting is that the elements from our past, our present, and things that lie outside our timeline can all be associated together. This is why we have irrational fears we know do not exist, such as monsters. Another example of this is when we fantasize about a person and create scenarios in our head that have little or nothing to do with the actual situation. Remembering. When it comes to remembering, the quality of how well we remember, our ability to do so, is what we commonly refer to as our memory. This memory is entirely dependent on associations, though it is something separate from the manner in which associations function freely. When we actively try to remember, we are doing one of two things: attempting to actively recall an element that has nothing to do with our immediate surroundings and thus would not be experienced in the natural flow of experience in the immediate moment, or attempting to recall an element that does concern our immediate surroundings, but due to the degradation of our associations is not properly being recalled. In the first instance, our mind can be compared to a computer and its RAM, random access memory. In the same fashion that we can browse through our computer to find a specific file we need, we can do this with our associations and find specific element, thought, emotion, or sensation we are searching for. An example of this: what was the name of that girl I had a crush on when I was in 5th grade? Via this line of self-inquiry, we are accessing our associations to pull a specific file from our records. Regarding the second manner in which we remember, it must be noted that associations have the possibility of degrading over time and even completely disappearing from our mind. In these cases, our mind is not able to recall the information we need concerning our immediate surroundings to provide us with the context. For example, when we see an individual we used to know but can no longer recall their name, In this situation, we actively engage in remembering to see if we can somehow find this element, the name of the person, that our mind is not able to automatically recall. This is either a consequence of the association weakening over time or having been completely erased due to obsolescence. Note, as for imagining, what we consider as the future forms part of imagination just as much as the improbable that has nothing to do with our timeline. The future is uncertain and thus is only an imagination of ours. The fact that something is more likely to happen does not absolve an experience from being categorized as an imagination. Stickiness of ideas, a refresher. Now, the idea here is not to go around claiming to have the answer to everything and making statements such as, I know what the states of consciousness are and what consciousness is. It is important to realize that our definition of consciousness and its states is specific to our particular development. This is not the absolute definition for these words, perspective included. Words and concepts are merely tools to bring about understanding. The meaning of words is not absolute. The user and community give words their meaning, ones they agree upon. In our society, we of course must have words that are objective and whose meaning does not waver. However, there are other words and concepts that are considered to be more abstract, which we are a bit more flexible with and which have a certain subjectivity to them. What is important is that the intended meaning for the word is clearly explained and the audience is aware of this meaning. This clarification relates to a theme that this writing attempts to instill within the reader throughout the text. There are no absolute truths. Just as fiction writers create a world in which the plot takes place, non-fiction writers do the same. The danger is that we sometimes are not able to realize that there is indeed a world being created by the author of non-fiction works, and this slyly fuses with our own world without our being any wiser to it. Imagine if suddenly we believed we were immersed in a fictitious world from one of our books. Just as this is obviously a problem, allowing a non-fictitious work to blend with our world unbeknownst to us can be just as much of a problem. We must remain aware of what we accept by the mere act of reading. How perspective creates our experience while asleep. When we are asleep, the process of perspective is slightly altered. Two subprocesses go offline and our ongoing experience is created in a unique manner. Our sense organs are no longer actively picking up information from our environment, nor are we having experience created via our capacities from our mind's interpretation of this incoming information. Essentially, the external influence upon the process of perspective is shut off and we have no more life experience. Our entire experience while asleep is comprised of input number 2, associations, as we experience these in a state of consciousness of remembering and imagination. Note, our sense organs are not entirely offline, as these can still be activated. If something sets us off while asleep, alarms us, we wake up and our senses are back up and running. This sensitivity to be alerted remains in our sense organs even while asleep. However, these are not actively gathering information. In sleeping, we are still in the process of perspective and experiencing the flow of our life experience. We can experience in all three of our capacities, thinking, feeling, and sensorially. However, there is no notion of time since we do not have the reference of experiencing the moment or life experience as we do when we are awake. Without having this reference point available to us, we can have no conceptualization of time. Just as up cannot exist without down, the past, remembering, along with events that are not on a timeline, imagination cannot be categorized or differentiated as such if there is no present, no live action to serve as a point of reference. Experience we can categorize as remembering or imagining while awake is not differentiated when asleep. It is simply what we are experiencing. Consequently, the flow of experience within dreams apparently lacks logic and linearity. Dreams are composed of arrangements of associations that can be categorized as remembering or imagining, but dreams are neither quite or the other. They are not exactly solely memories and they are not solely imaginations. It is difficult to understand exactly what dreams are, but if we understand how these are shaped, we can get as close as we can to understanding them. Maybe. Dreams result in new associations forming that would never have been established in the awakened flow of experience. The unique manner in which perspective creates our ongoing experience while asleep allows for unique associations to come about. Note, when we are made unconscious either by anesthesia or when we go into deep sleep where we do not dream, because we do experience when dreaming, it can be said that in these moments we actually do disconnect totally from experience itself, and thus we are completely unconscious. We go offline. We are not experiencing, but we are not doing anything else either. At any level where we are conscious, where there is awareness, we are experiencing, and thus our life experience is being created. Author's note: at this moment, it is the perfect time to gain valuable insight into meditation and what exactly this is. Before proceeding, read the insight, Meditation, Summary of the Four-Step System. We have reached the conclusion of the four-step system, by which we analyzed experience itself. We learned that what we are experiencing, what we are engaged in, is actually the process by which our life experience is created, and we discovered the inputs that serve as the components resulting in experience itself. The inputs. Input number 1. The information that our sense organs receive from their interactions with the environment. Input number 2. The associations. What we are experiencing, what we are engaged in. Perspective. The process by which our ongoing life experience is created. How does reality relate to our analysis? We do not experience reality, but we are indeed physically in reality. The setting where our experience takes place is reality. Chapter conclusion. Take a moment to consider all this information and to appreciate how amazing it is. Realize how this knowledge can potentially allow us to affect our life experience in ways that were impossible when we were simply living life and trying to arrange or fix our circumstances from within said life. We have mostly been doing the equivalent of attempting to, referring back to the video game analogy, change the theme and objective of the video game by simply playing it, when in actuality this can only take place by taking a step back, putting the controller down, and analyzing the situation we find ourselves in. Understanding experience itself, what experience is comprised of, its structure, is necessary in order for us to direct our life experience as we please. We only have the possibility of taking control of our destiny when we come to realize our nature, when we realize our programmable essence. Without this knowledge, we are slaves to our surroundings, to our environment, and to our beliefs, since we know not what pulls our strings, or that we even have strings. We believe we are free, but without this liberating knowledge, we are caged birds at the beck of an invisible master. Where exactly we are in our overall process. We now possess the understanding regarding what we are experiencing, perspective, and what the inputs are that we must consciously affect in order to direct our life experience in accordance with our will. In Chapter 3, we will learn the methods by which we will consciously affect the inputs, along with how to apply said methods to our own life experience in order to achieve our ultimate goal. Download the complete book in order to follow along from the website. The link is in both the video and the channel description. Thank you so much.